Hello, and welcome to Hopu Games Dev Thoughts 29. Before we get onto the main topic of today's Dev Thoughts, I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone for the amazing reception and reaction to the announcement of Risk of Rain Returns. The entire development team has loved reading all of your comments and sharing in the excitement of the reveal of our latest game. To keep discussing Risk of Rain Returns, you can join me and the rest of Hopu Games right on our Discord, and don't forget the rest of our social media like Twitch, Twitter and TikTok. All of the links are down in the description. And while you're down there busy clicking links, please visit the store page and give the game a wishlist. It really helps us get the game in front of as many new eyes as possible. With your support, we've already made the top 75 most wishlisted games on Steam. And without further ado, the subject of today's Dev Thoughts. One of our biggest new features in Risk of Rain Returns that breathes new life and replayability into the game are the new alternate abilities for each character. Each survivor has 3 extra abilities to use as alternates. Today I'm going to showcase one from each of the returning survivors, leaving plenty for you to discover yourself when we release the game later this year. Let's start off with the face of Risk of Rain, the Commando. The alternate to a secondary attack phase round is the Combat Knife. The Combat Knife is a close range melee attack that deals 150% damage and also wounds the enemy. Wounded enemies take an additional 50% damage from all attacks. Great when used in concert with the rest of his moves, slash your enemies with the Combat Knife, create some distance and then blast away with your long range abilities for devastating effect. Next up is Huntress, who, by the way, is now unlocked by default like in Risk of Rain 2. The alternate to her laser glaive is the new Laser Cyclone. This large, slow-moving attack deals damage over time before returning back to the Huntress. The trick with this ability is to carefully kite the Laser Cyclone in and around the enemies that are attacking you while continuing to pelt them with your other abilities. While on paper this ability is lower damage than the Laser Glaive, with skillful movement you can achieve a near 100% uptime on this ability, doing huge damage over the course of a full run. Enforcer comes racing into Risk of Rain Returns with his new secondary ability, Shield Tackle. Starting to get overwhelmed by a group of enemies overrunning your defences? Put them back in their place and under your control by charging into them, knocking them back, stunning them and dealing 5 times 100% damage along the way. One alternate ability we gave a short glimpse of in last month's Dev Thoughts is Bandit's new primary alternative, the Whip. This ability switches Bandit into a melee ranged hybrid. The Whip deals 200% damage while pushing enemies back. A more powerful alternative to Blast, use your evasive abilities to avoid damage whilst cracking the Whip and then finishing them off with Lights Out. Everyone's favourite robot survivor, Handy, returns with an alternate to its special ability Force Reassembly called Disassemble. Instead of a massive hammer, Handy whips out a giant buzzsaw which tears combatants apart and hits more times the more attack speed that you have, perfect when used in conjunction with Overclock. Another advantage of Disassemble is the ability to slowly move while casting, which allows maximum damage especially against conga lines of chasing enemies. Engineer returns with one of the strongest single abilities in the game. You can now replace his standard auto turrets with the experimental prototype laser turret. You can drop one of these huge hulking sentries down, inheriting all of your items just like your regular turrets, which charges up over 8 seconds before letting loose with a huge 1200% damage laser blast. Being able to one-shot most enemies in the game does come with a drawback. Firing this turret rapidly damages itself and will be completely destroyed after a single shot, needing to be replaced to fire again, unless you can find a Dio's best friend. The survivor with the biggest amount of changes between Risk 1 and Risk of Rain Returns is Miner, with his new heat meter that allows him to dish out more and more damage the hotter he becomes. On top of this new mechanic, he has a new set of moves, including a replacement for his primary where he throws his pickaxe towards his enemies. When your heat meter is full and you start scorching, these throwing axes pierce enemies and are thrown more rapidly, making Miner deal a huge amount of damage at mid-range. One of the trickier aspects of playing a sniper in Risk 1 was hitting specific targets with your strongest abilities, as the level fills up with enemies quite quickly, especially on later stages. With the alternative to steady aim, you can overcome this, introducing the Quickscope. While it does a lower but still impressive 600% damage compared to steady aim, the biggest benefit of this shot is the ability to pick exactly where it lands by releasing the fire button when the aiming reticle is over your desired target. Acrid returns once again to spread poison to the inhabitants of Petrichor 5 with the alternative to his secondary ability, the Toxic Bubble. One of the most diverse abilities in the game, the Toxic Bubble does 60% damage over time to any enemy it touches, and also does 600% damage to any enemies in range when it explodes after 5 seconds. Need to infect more enemies than you can kite into the bubble? Simply give it a whack with one of your melee primaries and it'll float through the crowd. Finally, use the toxic bubble to help bridge large gaps or leap over enemies, as you and your teammates can use it as a bouncy jump pad. Master of Millie, the mercenary, has a new way to slip around his enemies' attacks with his alternate secondary, Focus Strike. Holding down this attack sheathes your weapon and places you into an immobile stance. Release the moment an enemy strikes and you will completely deflect the attack, doing a huge burst of 1000% retaliatory damage. We've improved load as standard now by allowing you to grapple diagonally upwards regardless of the other abilities you pick. One ability that perfectly complements this newfound mobility is the new secondary attack, Short Circuit. Crash down and stun enemies in a large radius for 350% damage. This move can be performed mid-air for a diagonal downwards dash, or on the ground for an immediate devastating slam. And last, but by no means least, it's Chef. You know what? For a robot whose only reason to exist is to cook stuff for people, it seems to spend zero time in the preparation of delicious treats for us all. Selfish. Dumb. This isn't a problem in Risk of Rain Returns. Chef now has an alternate to his special ability, Cook. After tenderizing your enemies by getting them to load health, gather your ingredients by slicing and dicing any nearby monsters. Any killed are turned into a buffet of delectable meals that you can save for yourself or share with your fellow survivors. Each meal is its own special item that gives its own unique effect, but surviving the challenges of Petrichor 5 is hungry work. Each of these items only lasts a short amount of time, so you'll need to keep on cooking to reap the benefits. Thanks for tuning into the Dev Thoughts again, everyone. I'll be back in touch soon to let you know exactly who you need to impress to unlock some of these alternate abilities. Bye for now.